This afternoon, we're going to be thinking about using Explorify to support and challenge pupils. So what I'd like you first to just let me know and let each other know are how familiar are you with Explorify? So I'm going to ask you to use the Mentimeter function that we've used in the past. Okay, thank you. If you're still fumbling around and trying to submit your answer, then I'll just leave it there for a couple more seconds. So clearly I've got a lot of people that are already familiar or very familiar with Explorify, and everybody's at least been using it, has used it a few times with children. So what I'm hoping this afternoon is that you'll get some ideas of how you might be able to use it differently with your pupils. So most of you already know this, but the Explorify is a set of free online resources produced by Wellcome. What I love about them are that they are so flexible and you can use them in so many different ways. Some teachers use them as settling activities because the activities become very familiar to the children. They don't need a lot of explanation, so teachers can use them at the beginning of a day during register time so that pupils can just be having a think and a little bit of discussion quietly. It's a very familiar, comfortable activity, or it can also be used to stir the children up a little bit, getting them thinking in different ways, sometimes actually providing a little bit of conflict so that the children are challenging and really questioning and having to justify their responses. So it's really, really flexible, used in lots of different ways. There's 8 different types of activities. We're not going to have time to go through all of those this afternoon, but I will just model a couple of them. Once you know how to run the activity and the children have been engaged in the activity once or twice, then it's very, very simple and needs very little information. The first few activities on there, up to the what if, are sort of quite short 15-minute talk activities that require no resources, whereas the last 4 activities are activities that might involve a little bit more time or may involve actual physical resources. So a little bit more time or preparation is required for those, but they're still really worth looking at. So Explorify can be used in a number of different ways. It might be that an activity is used at the start of a new topic or when introducing a new concept. It could be providing an opportunity for children to reflect on their learning and apply the learning they've already gained, so therefore embedding it more solidly. Or it can be used by the teachers to support with formative assessment. Listening to children talk is one of the best ways of finding out what knowledge is really embedded. And these activities, because they're all talk activities, provide really good opportunities for this. There are a number of benefits for teachers. The activities are designed to challenge pupils to think more deeply, but in a creative and fun way, which I think is really important. The activities are very inclusive of all pupils, and that's what we're going to be thinking about this afternoon, how they can support the less able whilst also challenging the more able. And because of the way the activities are structured with support materials, which I will share later, they should be supporting teachers to develop confidence in teaching science, but also in developing their subject knowledge as well. There are a range of pupil benefits for the pupils. A lot of the activities involve the children looking closely at things, images, videos, so really enhancing those observational skills. They'll be thinking about knowledge that they've already gained. They'll be learning from each other, so it'll be increasing their knowledge, but often they'll be expected to think and apply that knowledge in slightly different contexts. They'll be working together, sharing their ideas. So for some children, this is a great way of building their confidence. Often there's not a right answer, so children feel more confident to share their half-formed ideas or things that they're not sure about. Because they're talking so much, The vocabulary is really important. And again, they'll be learning from each other, but it also just provides many more opportunities for them to use that vocabulary that we need them to be using if it's going to be solidly embedded. They're going to be asking more questions. It will make them think more creatively. And some of those activities will lend themselves to going on to plan inquiries or solve problems. So really what we're trying to encourage the children to do is develop in their thinking. And this is Bloom's taxonomy pyramid. And really, if the children engage in a few activities, and they're probably the quicker zoom in, zoom out, odd one out type activities, then they're developing their understanding and helping them to remember things. But as we introduce more activities, or we're using a wider range of activities, so they're beginning to build confidence in their thinking and they're beginning to apply that understanding in a broader way, then we're moving up that taxonomy. And then where we want to get the children to, particularly those more able children, is to that top end where they're analysing, evaluating and creating. And that's where, again, particularly those last activities, those longer, more resource activities, will encourage the children to do that type of thinking. So Explorify can really support with that, remembering and understanding that is so important for our less able children to be secure, but also extending our more able children. So Explorify can be used not only at different times of the day, but also at different points during our topic that we're teaching. This here is just a little flow chart of the way that we'll typically move through a unit that we're teaching. And we'll typically start with an activity at the beginning to find out and remind the children of their prior learning. And I think Explorify is a great starting point for this particular activity. We're going to try an activity now. On the chat, could you post what you think this image is? You've had a little while to look at it, so go with your gut instinct and just type on there what you think it is. As I was saying earlier, with this particular activity, there is no right or wrong answer at this stage. What I'm interested in why is it people were thinking what they were thinking? How can you justify what you were thinking? So we've got a few different answers. Sarah has suggested lemon sherbet. So what we're going to do, if you don't mind, Sarah, is we're just going to unmute you and ask you to share what it was that made you think it was lemon sherbets.
Well, the colour, and then I thought they looked like lemons, and then I just thought of lemon sherbets. But when I've seen pollen, I thought, yeah, probably that.
Okay. Okay, and I think that's also really important that because the children will be talking, that actually it's okay to change our minds. And that is part of the learning process. So yes, you may have gone, oh, why did I say lemon sherbet? But actually you have justified it. So that's absolutely perfect. Somebody else said chickpeas. Can we find who it was that said chickpeas? Rachel, can I just unmute you and ask you to explain why you thought it was chickpeas?
Yeah, it's the colour. I thought the colour of it, but then, you know, when you get them out of the tin and they're slightly wet, so they're all a bit shiny, and they're all clumped together like that. So that's why it was.
Okay, thank you very much. And as you can see, that's totally valid. Both those explanations are totally valid. And then we had a number of people talking about flowers. So if anybody would like to, or should we just pick, let's just pick somebody. Could we just pick somebody that, let's go with Jackie. Jackie, can I unmute you? Okay, Jackie, would you mind explaining what you were thinking?
Yeah, it looked like the middle of a Gerber or a daisy. So I kind of thought that maybe it was the pollen in the middle of the color was yellow. It kind of looked inviting for a bee. That's kind of what I thought about. Okay,
so again, we're very reliant on color and shape, which is totally, you know, that would be our first instinct. And then, as we were talking about earlier, that sort of reflective nature. So I'm now going to zoom out a little bit. And would somebody like to volunteer what you're now thinking? So if you just go into participants and you can wave your hand, and then we can unmute you. Have a think about whether what would you now say? Have you changed your mind, or are you sticking with what you're saying? And is there more evidence now to back up what you were thinking? Okay, Emily is volunteering, so we'll unmute Emily.
Now we've zoomed out a bit, we can start to see some white petals. Well, they look like petals on the bottom left and right corner. So if we'd said flower head, we might be a bit more specific now to say a white flower, like some people suggested the daisy.
Okay, thank you very much. So again, we've got more clues now, haven't we? We've got that white part coming in down there at the bottom. So that's now suggesting a particular type of flower. If we zoom out a little bit further, I think we can now see that we've got those petals. Daisy, why a daisy? Would anybody like to justify if it is a daisy? What is it that now would confirm or perhaps not support it being a daisy? Again, if somebody would like to wave. Or not. That's fine. I would suggest that actually it is, if we now think about the petals, the shape, the colour, a daisy does have a lot of petals that are long and thin, and I think we can see that they're beginning to, the shape of those petals is beginning to form there. So that type of activity is good just to get the children thinking. There's no right or wrong answer. And often, initially, when you do these activities, the less able children feel more comfortable contributing because they're not so worried about being right all the time. And it might actually be your more able children who are a little bit more cautious because they want to be right. And we've got to get across to the children that it's not about right or wrong. It's about being able to justify and give reasons for your answers. So this particular activity may be used at the start of the Year 3 topics about plants. And you can see there's an objective about the life cycle of plants, including pollination. It may be the starting point. I think a natural next step would then be to go outside and look at some plants, remind the children of the learning that they've done in Year 1 with naming the parts of plants, but then also in Year 2 where they've been growing plants. So we've got them thinking about the topic, we've reminded them what they know, and then we move on to the chunk of time where we're supporting them to learn the new knowledge that we want them to acquire. And again, Explorify can be used in different ways through this. So if we've got an odd one out activity like this could be used at the beginning of the topic, where children may just be talking about the similarities are that all the images have flowers. They've all got an animal in them. The animal is in the flower or is on the flower. And also things like a blurry background. It may just be based at this point in time very much on those observational skills. If we were then to do this same activity at the end of a unit, we would expect them to start talking about what's going on in these images and the fact that those insects are being attracted by the nectar possibly, or the bright colours of the petals, and then they're gathering the pollen intentionally or accidentally and transferring it. So they'll be using their knowledge to talk about what's in the pictures and what's similar and different about them. So those activities, the same activities, may be used more than once at different times. With each activity, there are really easy to follow instructions. Most of you probably already have looked at these, but it is worth pointing it out to other teachers that you're sharing this with perhaps. Very simple instructions, 1 or 2, sometimes 3 or 4 instructions. The instructions are the same for each time for the activity. So once you've done it once, you know how to do it, the children know how to do it. There's also background science knowledge, just to make sure that you know what is going on, although most of it is about the thinking, but it's useful for a teacher to have an understanding as well. And then there's other ideas of the things that you may wish to take it further with. So going back to our sequence of learning, once we've supported the children, hopefully, and we feel that we've taught the new knowledge that they need, we can't assume that they've all learnt it, so we probably take a pit stop at that point and just do a quick review, a reflection on who do we know is secure and who is not secure. And then at that point, we can start to provide differentiated activities for those two groups of children. So some children will need more of the same around the knowledge that they've already got to really consolidate and embed it. Other children need something different because they've already got that knowledge. What they need to be doing is applying it in different contexts and really broadening their understanding. And again, this is where Explorify can really help. So repeating some of the activities. So going back to the odd one out and asking the children to explain it again for consolidation with those few children that need it. It might be that you revisit an activity that they've done in the class. So for instance, it's quite likely that as part of the topic to help children understand the functions of different parts of the plant, you may well have set up the celery or carnations in coloured water. And then the children can revisit it by watching the video. What you might want to do is give them the key vocabulary that you would expect them to use, so that actually they can almost do a voiceover and talk about what is going on as the video is playing. So they're given another opportunity to talk about the learning that they've got. Other children don't need that because they've already got that knowledge. So we can think about what can we do to enrich them further and challenge them more. And this is where those last four activities can be really useful. So for example, this is a big question. That is all the resources there are. It is just that question. But the children would then be thinking about, what am I going to do to answer that question? Do you need big seeds to grow big plants? So they'd need to think about, firstly, what types of inquiry might be useful? What strategies could I use? So it could be that they think about, I could gather a range of seeds and then I could plant them and I could see whether there's a pattern between how big each of them grows when they're fully matured. That's probably going to take rather a long time. So it might be that they need to do some initial research to find out how large seeds are and how large the final fully matured plants are. And then they would use that as a pattern seeking exercise to see if there's a pattern between the size of the seeds and the size of the plants. So that's an activity, again, because it comes with very clear instructions for the children, with some questions that the teacher can provide with them. It should be something that they can get on with independently, freeing the teacher up to work with the group that needed that consolidation. So I think there are a number of different times that during the topic that Explorify could be used. Different types of activity will lend themselves to different aspects of that learning. And some activities will provide more support for the less able, and some will provide more challenge for the more able. So I think I would encourage those people who've used a few activities to go back, certainly when you're back at school, go back and have a look and think about, can you push those children on to do more deep thinking using these activities? So just a few things to point out about Explorify, because if you've not really spent the time exploring the website, as teachers, we tend to go straight to the activities and don't necessarily look at the other parts of the website. So I'm just going to quickly highlight a few other aspects. There is a dashboard which you can actually use really usefully. If you were to go through and find the topics, the activities for the topic that you're coming up and doing shortly, then you can actually click on each activity and it will go into your dashboard as a saved activity, which means you'll be able to find those activities really quickly rather than having to search through all the activities again. When you've done an activity, should you wish, you can mark it as done, and you can then actually type something in to say how the activity went, whether it's one to avoid or whether you'd really like to do it again next time. But also you could put in some assessment comments about the pupils if you wish. So they would then go into your dashboard, which can be accessed at the top of the screen there. And you can see there's a couple of activities that I had highlighted as my saved activities. Saved activities there, and then the marked done if I've done some assessment. The other aspect, the other part of the website that you might want to have a look at is the blog. So the blog The Explorify team post various bits and pieces on the blog, and you can also search through the top topics. The part that I hadn't realised existed until not so long ago is the downloads page. And on here, there's a lot of really supportive documents and information. There are things that you can use to decorate your class and use with the children to really get them motivated, or if you're the subject leader, you might like to share those with your teachers to encourage them to use it with their children. But then also there's these resources for teachers. It is worth having a little look through them because there's some really useful ideas about how to use Explorify, but also more general science teaching tips. And they can be accessed through this downloads button. A couple of other things that you might want to be aware of is there is a closed group on Facebook, Explorify Staff Room, where again, the Explorify team just post updates. So if you want to keep up to date with the new activities, that would be a good place to go. Or also on Twitter at Explorify School. Again, we'll keep you up to date with new additions and opportunities and that sort of thing. Obviously, at the moment, you won't be using Explorify with your children, but there are a number of ways that you can just keep updated or keep up to date with what's going on in this period. So there's the hashtag Science from Home, where people are posting various things, and Explorify activities are being posted daily, which children can access from home, just to do a quick little bit of thinking. I like to think it's the sort of thing that they might chat with their parents and families over the dinner table. There's also, as I mentioned, the Explorify staff room. If there's anything particular that you would like to become one of those activities, then you can post it on there, or contact the team via email, Explorify@Wellcome, if there's things that you particularly would think would be useful for your teaching next time. We do have Tom from Explorify on the webinar, so I may ask him if he would like to just say a few words. But for next week we will be using Plan to Plan, will be the title. If you would like the slides from today, you can get them by emailing admin@primaryscience, as it says there. The video will hopefully be on YouTube very shortly, and the ones from the previous last 2 weeks are also on our YouTube channel, so you can access them. We are going to continue to use the same Zoom link for the next few weeks. We will then have to change it, but so at the moment, we're going to be on the same Zoom link at the same time. So I'm just going to ask Tom whether he would like to just say something briefly.
Hi, yes. So my name's Tom. I'm from the Wellcome Trust, and so work on Explorify. Just to say, Naomi, thank you very much for that. Really informative introduction, and I think it's a really useful way of highlighting how Explorify can be used in lots of different ways within the learning sequence. So that was really, really useful. Just nothing particularly really to highlight apart from, obviously Naomi mentioned the current situation. Obviously no one's teaching in school at the moment. But in addition to the Science from Home hashtag activities, little activities you'll see on Twitter and our Facebook group, we are going to be making some of the activities available for you to share with parents so they can use with their children at home. Because obviously, Explorify, you need to sign up and register to use it. So rather than parents having to do that, we've decided to make, I think there's going to be 10 different sets of activity collections made available, which will be, if you look on the blog, and probably on the staff room as well, all the activities and the links to them will be posted there. And each week it'll be on a different theme. So the first one's on plants, maybe available tomorrow, but certainly from next week. And they will be connected to BBC Bitesize and the resources they're going to be putting out for science from next week. So look out for those because they'll be shareable with your parents and accessible without need to sign up. So that's the only other thing to really talk about. So thank you, Naomi.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much for joining us today. Hopefully I will see you next week. Thank you. Goodbye.